the last haven. Darkness pressed against the sanctuary walls like a living thing, cold and unyielding, seeping into every crack and crevice. The air smelled of damp stone, rusted metal, and something faintly coppery, a scent that clung stubbornly, a reminder that life here always came at a cost. Lanterns flickered along the narrow corridors, casting long, trembling shadows that seemed to twist and slither in the corners, as though the walls themselves were aware of her presence. Above ground, the world was ash and ruin, a sunless wasteland where nothing moved except the whispering wind, carrying the taste of death in every gust. Era had known no other home. She had grown up beneath the earth, learning to navigate the tunnels and chambers carved from cold concrete and steel, always under the watchful eyes of the so-called guardians, pale, sharp-eyed vampires who moved through the sanctuary with a predatory grace. Their faces were perfect, unmoving, and their presence was both protective and oppressive. Each day, the elders reminded her and the other children of the balance the vampires preserved between human life and the horrors that stalked above. But doubt had taken root in Era's mind, small and insidious at first, growing like a shadow along the tunnel walls. Rumors whispered through the corridors like smoke. Missing humans, bloodless bodies discovered in lower halls, murmurs of those led to the upper chambers who never returned. The elders dismissed these tales as childish fear, hallucinations brought on by stress, or mischief. But Era had seen the patrol's eyes flicker with hunger, had felt the walls hum with anticipation whenever the feedings occurred. Protection was only the veneer. Beneath it was a deeper, darker reality. Her curiosity grew into obsession. She began following the patrols in silence, keeping to shadows, memorizing their routines. The upper chambers were quiet, eerily sterile, lit by dim sconces that made the vampire's pale skin glimmer. Humans were brought forward, trembling and compliant. The feeding was clinical, precise, almost ritualistic. Red mist lingered in the air, sweet and metallic, coating her tongue and nostrils even when she was hidden. Those who returned were never quite the same. Eyes too bright, movements too smooth, faces drained of the hesitation that marked true human life. Era's stomach twisted. They called themselves guardians, but the truth was obvious now. They were farmers. Humans existed to feed them, to sustain the vampire's immortality. Their vigilance, their protection, was nothing more than a cultivated illusion. Then came the night she heard a voice calling from the upper tunnels. Soft, desperate, and trembling. She followed it, heart hammering, until she found a small child crouched in a shadowed alcove, wide eyes glimmering with fear and fragile hope. They said you'd protect us, the child whispered. Era knelt beside them, feeling the child's pulse thrum like a fragile drumbeat against her palm. I will, she said softly, voice steady even as her own heart trembled. The upper levels were unnervingly still, save for the soft hum of the feeding chambers. Pale figures moved with surgical precision, shadows stretching long and spindly across stone floors. Era felt the predatory gaze on her back, hunger and awareness brushing against her skin like icy fingers. She realized the truth she had feared. The vampires were not saviors. They were harvesters, keeping humans alive only to sustain themselves, maintaining the illusion of balance while feeding on the living. Fear gripped her, yet beneath it flickered determination. She could confront them, risking death, or flee with the child into the wasteland above. Both paths were perilous. Both paths demanded courage she wasn't sure she possessed. She took a deep breath, tasting the metallic tang of the air, feeling the cold stone beneath her palms. The child, shivering and fragile, clutched her hand. We have to go, Era whispered, and together they crept toward a concealed hatch leading to the surface. Above ground, the world was desolate, ash swirling in gusts that carried the faint echo of past life. Buildings leaned like skeletons, Streets were rivers of gray dust, and the sky was a muted canvas, a sickly pale where the sun should have been. Yet freedom pulsed in Era's veins like electricity, fierce and trembling. For the first time, she tasted it, the raw, fragile exhilaration of choice. But she knew the sanctuary waited below. The vampires would not forgive defiance lightly. Lanterns in their chambers flickered as if anticipating her flight, and shadows stretched along the walls, whispering her name. They were patient, eternal, and hungry, as inevitable as the tide. Era gritted her teeth. "We will survive," she vowed to the child, to herself, to the wind that howled across the wasteland. "Even if it kills me." The child's fingers squeezed hers, and Era felt the fragile warmth of life against the cold, ash-stained air. They moved forward, toward the unknown, leaving behind the false haven and its predatory guardians. The wasteland loomed ahead, harsh, empty, and dangerous, but it was theirs. For now, humanity had a chance. Below, in the tunnels and feeding chambers, the guardians stirred. The faint hum of hunger echoed in the darkness, and somewhere deep within the labyrinth, a new shadow moved, silent, patient, and defiant. One that would challenge the so-called balance the vampires had maintained for centuries. Ash swirled around their feet. Moonlight spilled over ruined buildings. Mist rose from cracks in the earth like fingers beckoning them onward. And above it all, the wind carried the whisper of survival, fragile and unyielding. "We are still here, and we will not yield."